All right, and now it's time to predict the future with our crystal ball segment, where we predict the future in entertainment some 20 years from now. We're going to start off with you, Andrew. Andrew, what do you have for us for your prediction?
Well, I'd like to start by saying I have faith in the rebellious nature of teenagers. I am really interested in seeing what the current culture does to young people and how they shape the culture in the next 20 years. And I was recently talking to some family and some friends, and they still have kids in high school. And throughout the whole pandemic, when they weren't allowed to go to school, they were actually, they had to go to Zoom classes. But teenagers being teenagers, they actually would all go to somebody's house, get on their laptops, and convince the teacher that they were all in different places, but they were just hanging out. And I saw that and I started thinking, like, yeah, we've placed a lot of emphasis on technology, and wow, isn't technology great? And these social media platforms are doing more um, to spy on us and to surveil us and to control our behavior. My feeling is that in the next 10, 20 years, what we're going to start seeing is a lot more live entertainment. A lot of people going into stuff that's local, that's specific to their locale, and high school students going out doing what they want to do and not posting about it on social media because they're going to get tired. We're going to be the millennials, and they're going to start talking. We'll be okay millennials by, 2030. And they're going to look at us and go, they have to post everything that they do. It's kind of sad. I think we're going to see, maybe even a return to something like vaudeville. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Like High School Musical, basically.
No, not even a little bit. Not remotely like High School Musical. Thanks for putting that up. No.
I mean, vaudeville. I don't know.
I might be the odd one out, but what's Oddville or vaudeville?
Vaudeville.
What is that?
Vaudeville. Like 1920s and 30s comedians, magicians, circus shows. These are people who had acts, and they would travel from town to town, and this is where all of the great character actors came from, and voices that people still do. They're hearkening back to stuff that was never put on a screen. It was just people putting up a tent and being like, hey, it's a show, we're coming to your town. And it's already started. People have been putting on shows, and whether it's comedy or live music, secret shows that people are like, hey, I know you want to stay home and watch YouTube, but let's sneak out tonight. Let's go see what's going on.
Yeah, why don't you get out of the house? Yeah.
We've been locked up for 2 years. I think people are going to start, really relishing the opportunity to get out amongst crowds and amongst people who are just living life, because the screen has become something that is part of every moment of our lives, and I think we're gonna want to escape it.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept, Andrew. Roland, what do you have for us?
I honestly, I was thinking more of like franchises. Franchises I don't think, not for a while, are going to be ending. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see like, a crazy franchise like Fast and Furious to just get crazier and crazier. Probably at least 2 movies where it's featuring like Paul Walker's kid. And I think we're going to get to a point where the franchises are building and building, and we'll have like just insane crossovers you're never going to hear, like you would never think of. And I think we're going to see possibly like a collapse of these franchises. I think we're just going to get so overstimulated with them that they're going to get to a point where it's you kind of have to make original movies. And if you are using these popular licensed characters, people are going to more and more see as kind of not a sellout, but lazy almost, if that makes sense.
That'd be neat. I think that's a long time coming.
They've already talked about that.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be in 20 years. I think it'll might even be a little bit after that, but at some point it's going to get there.
You think it's 20 more years of reboots and remakes?
I hate to say it. Yes.
Nah.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem to be slowing down. It just seems to be just going faster and faster. And I think we just have to. They're just gonna keep putting coal in the train until it goes off the bridge.
Yeah, I see what you do with faster and faster. I mean, they've already pitched they've talked about like combining Jurassic Park or Jurassic World with Fast and Furious, and that's. I mean, I would watch that movie, yes, but maybe like as a one-off. Like I don't know. It's sort of like for me, like the original Fast franchise. Like this is the cast. I'm pretty sure from one of the earlier movies, if not the first one. You look at that and you're like, maybe there's 3 out of those people, like that entire crew that still followed through. I mean, they've all taken movies off, but they're on to like almost like the 11th film now, or the 10th film. It's eventually you gotta like hop off the train or the car or whatever and retire, and it's sort of played out. I mean, they're gonna, but they have like the spin-offs too, like the Hobbs and Shaw stuff. They're making another one of those. So
yeah.
Wonderful.
Han's back. Apparently, Han's back, so there's more of that happening.
I mean, what about you, Daniel? What do you think? What's your prediction?
Well, for me, it's everything has got to do with, or rather, what I focused on was the future of streaming. The streaming wars in general. I feel like that's something that's gonna heat up quite a lot. We're currently in a phase where they're just trying to like get as many subscriptions as possible. So they're in that growth phase where a lot of streaming services are spending like 150% of their revenue in like producing more new content, which means they're operating in the red. They're not making money, they're losing money, and then the investors keep piling in. But that's not a sustainable model. So I feel like eventually what's going to end up happening here is you're going to start to see a lot of these bigger streaming services sort of become like the last one standing almost, and then the smaller ones are going to start to fall more to the wayside. And then what I kind of mean by that is you've already sort of seen that. Like Facebook Watch is a thing, but it's not quite what Facebook wanted it to be. YouTube Premium never truly took off. Like they were like Cobra Kai used to be a show that was a YouTube original, right? But then now that show is on what Netflix picked it up because YouTube was like, we're changing track, we don't do this anymore because it's not really working for us. So I feel like we're gonna see more of that. We're gonna this proliferation of streaming services. Like you look at what we had in 2007 to look at what we had last year, and much the same this year. There's literally like 10 times as many streaming services out there, and I feel like a lot of these are gonna start to combine and get merged together. Like Peacock and Paramount Plus are like considerably smaller than their bigger competitors like Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video. Even Hulu might merge with Disney Plus. Hulu internationally doesn't even exist as its own entity. It's only like an American thing, and Disney now owns all of it. Like NBC is the only other shareholder that's remaining, and they're supposed to leave I think at some point this year or next year. So then Disney will have 100% ownership. So yeah, I feel like the world of streaming, whereas right now we have, it seems like more streaming services than you can keep track of, and 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, you're probably going to be down to like, I don't know, like the big 6, the big 4, whatever. So maybe you'll probably be able to count them on 2 hands.
Yeah. So Daniel, you talk about the survival of the fittest with these streaming services. Who do you see like remaining? Who do you see actually like surviving all of this?
Well, it's hard to tell right now, but to be honest, like let me see if I can pull it. This is a really nice picture here, which sort of demonstrates what I'm gonna say here. So here's what I think is gonna happen, right? You look at you have Disney Plus there, you have Hulu. I feel like eventually it's gonna get to a point where Disney Plus is gonna stagnate a little bit, like what Netflix is actually happening now. They've seemingly have gone to a market saturation point where they're not growing as much anymore as they would like to, and their share price gets affected every time they report that, and the shareholders don't like that. So Netflix doesn't really, Netflix can either acquire somebody or otherwise just keep pumping money into themselves. Disney, on the other hand, will probably just absorb Hulu and then just be one bigger service.
It's funny because Netflix has again raised their prices for the subscription.
It's $20 for the premium plan now.
Yeah, to 20. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
keeps going up every year.
It does, and some people would say the way that they're spinning it is, oh, well, we're creating a lot more new, wonderful content for you, so we're actually going to, the value's better. What that tells me is like, we're not selling as much, and maybe people are canceling their subscriptions, and maybe we've overextended ourselves. So would you guys mind picking up the tab?
It is literally that they're passing off the cost, because every time they send you that email, they're like, oh, so we're raising, like literally that's what the email said this time, some form of, we're raising our prices so that we can offer you even greater value, and even we can continue to provide you the great, fantastic entertainment that we're giving you. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I sort of get it. Like, for every extra dollar I'm paying a month, let's say $12 extra a year, you may be giving me like 10 new shows. I mean, obviously the math, whatever. I can take it.
I remember way back when it started, it was like what, $8.99 a month.
It was. It might have been even less than that.
Yeah, I mean, back then it was a good deal, and there were they brought back Arrested Development, and I was excited about it. But it's the price keeps going up, and I'll be honest, the quality keeps going down. So this is a bad time to raise prices for anything, given the inflation on everything else. But we'll see how many people stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, HBO Max is another example, right, where their Discovery's about to finish their purchase of Warner Media, and then Discovery's got their own streaming service, Discovery Plus. I feel like they will probably, once that is one big company, Discovery, I think they're meant to be called Warner Brothers Discovery, they might then decide, well, HBO Max and Discovery don't need to exist separately, or they might do what Disney does, and they have like the Disney bundle where you have ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney, and then you might now have, they're going to have the CNN Plus, which is a new streaming service that CNN is launching. So CNN Plus and HBO Max and Discovery might be the new Discovery Warner Brothers bundle or something like that.
On that note, I think, something I think has to happen is a subscription for just the content that you want. Somebody has to figure that out, but because cable companies were able to do that. You could get your bundle of like shows that you actually wanted to watch. You should be able to like choose. If it were piecemeal, if it was like, I'd like to watch that show, and you could choose which show you wanted to include in your subscription plan. That would be neat.
Yeah.
But there's too many people competing. And then the quality of the shows would have to go up, because people would pay for the ones that they actually wanted, and we'd vote with our dollars what was worth watching.
I feel like that's going to happen. There's more of that going to happen, because I read an article which was talking exactly about that, where maybe the future is like a service that decides to pick the best of, although it's harder to do that, right? Like, do you really think Netflix is going to be like,
I don't think it's hard. I think that it's what's standing in the way is greed, because we can click and point to anything. It's really easy to rent a movie on Apple TV or just get a subscription to Netflix. Why is it so difficult to say, like, you're watching a Hulu show, you get an ad for a Netflix show? We're not far off from saying, watch this show in that ad, where you just hit the button and then you go to this and you can buy it right there. And it wouldn't have to be, $4 every show. Maybe you could work it in. Maybe there's a subscription network that gives
I mean,
you
Roku
those
has
choices.
tried that,
Sure.
Like, Roku is sort of meant to be that, but it always becomes a matter of, I mean, maybe what you're naming, I feel like we're going to go in this cycle where we're going to end up where cable was, which is eventually you're going to have a company like Roku telling you, buy our $70 plan that includes Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max. I'm sorry if you don't do Peacock, but you can get Paramount Plus, and if you want to add Peacock, it's a $10 add-on, like what you would do for cable. Like, we're gonna basically have cable but for streaming.
Yeah, that's what I've been waiting for. It'd be silly not to do it, because now what's that product where it's like, unsubscribe from all of the subscriptions that you have? I forget. But
keep getting ads for that.
Truebill. It's like, this is a problem. I'm subscribed to too many things. I'm losing way more money on content I'm not watching every month. If Truebill exists, the opposite can exist, which is, hey, just pay for what you want.
Yeah. I mean, between YouTube TV and all the streaming services I don't know about you guys. I have like virtually every streaming service you can get. I even have like Boomerang.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like because I like my Hanna-Barbera cartoons, right? So I like Boomerang. And I also have a subscription to like Willow TV, which is for cricket because I'm a cricket fan and my family loves cricket. So between all of those, I'm spending way more than what I spent ever on cable. I mean, cable and my cable package happened to also include internet and phone, like home phone, and this is just the streaming services. But
And you would think that cable would be more, obviously.
it would, yeah. I mean, but like it's cable eventually had to. I mean, they were in such a competitive market that to lower their prices, and eventually they just got to a point where they couldn't anymore, and then the quality suffered because of the lower prices. And now you're getting like these. I think streaming services are great because they're producing better quality content than ever before, but also you probably your people are having to pay for it too. I think we're starting to feel that more than ever. But
Yeah.
I mean, that aside, we can talk about streaming wars all the time, and there's so much to talk about there. Like, there's all kinds of services that have come and gone, and there will be more that will come and go, and the graveyard of streaming services that were is only going to grow. But I mean, Brian, have you talked about your prediction for the future?
No, not yet. And actually, to what Andrew was actually just touching upon a little bit, greed. Speaking of greed, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I'm just going to touch upon it just a little bit. So I'm kind of doing something a little different from what you guys, already talked about, kind of stepping away, outside of Hollywood a little bit, focusing on sports just a little bit. So the future of the NFL and football in general, will it be around for another, 25 years or so? I mean, it's a good question, with all the, the head injuries, concussions, instances of CTE coming up. So basically, the NFL, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. We all know that, or are familiar with the fact that it's the richest sports league in the world. I think it has a revenue of some like 16 billion, which is crazy. But there's been
literally crazy.
Yeah, there's been many talks, of the NFL even being around, for years to come. Players are getting bigger, they're getting faster, they're getting stronger. We're seeing more head injuries, concussions. They're becoming more apparent. Brain damage. It's becoming more of a reality. And it's not so much, there's been steps taken to try and make equipment, safer. Whether it's like redesigning helmets, neck stabilization, having mandatory mouth guards, eliminating kickoffs, so on. But it's not so much that, it's the impact, it's the hits, it's the speed, at which somebody is tackled or gets hit, especially in the head area. So here's the thing. I love football. It's my favorite sport to watch, my favorite sport to cover. I've been a fan of it my whole life. I grew up on football. I would be heartbroken if football were to disappear and there was no more football. So, but I'm also not gonna sit here and tell you that, I think football is, like it should go away or it should disappear. I think it's going to disappear. I'm not going to be the one to sit here and do that.
You think anything would replace it?
In terms of something replacing it, we
just become a soccer country?
No, because
they do have the World Cup in 2024 in LA.
Yeah,
okay.
but
that's the Olympics. Sorry, but the World Cup, I think they're trying to get here anyway.
The NFL has become, let's face it, baseball for years back then. I mean, it was America's pastime. The NFL has replaced baseball and the NFL has become America's pastime. You look at the Super Bowl, the popularity with it. You look at just like, jersey sales. You look at, and even on social media, you know what I mean? Like, followers of like these athletes and, basically, for example, like when ESPN reports sports, for like football is the top one, whether it's college football, it's the NFL and pro football, it's taken over in terms of like popularity in the United States. And pretty much, a lot, could be said for popularity around the world for that matter too, even though it's not, nearly as big over in Europe or other countries for that matter. But it's such a powerful industry. And I can honestly say that I don't think it's going anywhere for in like the next 20 something years, just because of how powerful it's become. I mean, it's hard to say that you can really get rid of something as powerful as the NFL, and all the lawsuits that have come out and everything they've done for retired players, that have, like traces of CTE, in their brains. And it's,
I kind of want to go back to what you said earlier, Brian, but you said, baseball was our favorite pastime.
Well, it used to be.
Yeah.
Baseball
So
years
do you
ago.
think that there's any chance whatsoever that a new sport could take over football? Like, do you think like hockey has a chance, or maybe some
Hockey does not have a
weird
chance.
sport?
No, I don't think so
I like
because
hockey.
of
All right.
Soccer, I think will have the chance, but if anything,
Really?
maybe
The
for
biggest sport in the
pastime
world.
in the United States. Well, yeah, it's soccer is probably the most popular sport in the world, but and I think basketball is pretty close with that too for most popular sport in the world. But in terms of like football in the United States, no, I don't think any other sport is going to overtake it. It's just like the nature of the sport. People love to see the action. They love to see the hits. They love the contact. I mean, the fact that it's just like an overall like contact sport. Yeah, there's contact in hockey, but I mean, the whole point isn't to go and tackle somebody or take somebody out. You know what I mean? So
I think that I agree with what you said. Football is not going anywhere. It might plateau. I don't think in the next 20 years. I think 20 years is not long enough for any sport to take over, unless there's some drastic change or some kind of revolutionary thing happens that football just kind of goes down the drain. But to kind of, you know what, I feel pretty down right now. We're talking about concussions and helmet crushing and career-ending injuries. And Roland, any other predictions you want to throw out there? Lighten the mood here for us.
I do have one. I didn't know if it was gonna like upset the thing. I was gonna say mutton chops were coming back. But that was a total shift change. So
little connected mustaches that go. Yeah, I can see
The
that.
Well,
one
also,
billion thing that Andrew was pitching earlier.
I mean,
If there's one thing I could predict, I would say the future of entertainment, shows like this one, shows like Oh So Curious, that give you a lot of variety and something pleasant to come back to every week. And if that's something that you want to be part of your future, be sure to subscribe and join us every week when we come back.